Today at Blade HQ, we're asking the hard-hitting questions inquiring minds want to know. Would you ever do a US-made knife with Magnucut steel? Hello, everyone. It is I, Spencer. We have Ryan, and Ryan's the founder of the James brand. Did you fly in yourself?
I didn't. I thought about it. I looked at it.
Is that how you fly? I don't even know.
Yeah, you got a yoke and you got to do some of this, and then there's some pedals, and like next time we'll do that. It will be almost the same amount of time in terms of me driving to the airport and me flying myself.
And you're just in Portland?
I'm in Portland. Yeah,
okay, great.
Me and all the other knife companies.
Let's talk a little bit about the history of your company, where it came from, why you're even here, why EDC, why knives, why any of that, and then we have a pretty intriguing announcement, an overview to go over of a new product from the James brand. And then we took a few questions from social media last week to actually ask Ryan. So we're going to go through some of those and see if we can answer your question.
The James brand started officially on paper back in 2011. So it's been around for a while. But I had sort of always been an EDC guy without knowing that that was even a thing. I didn't even know the term. I worked for Burton Snowboards for a long time. And while I was there, somebody had made a little promotional, it was a Smith & Wesson sort of co-branded promotional knife. It's about 3 inches long. And they had co-branded it with some Burton logos, and they gave it to me. And it was kind of my first knife with a clip, kind of your standard small EDC knife. And I carried that in my pocket with a pen for, about 10 years. And, I think what we found and what everyone finds is after you do that for about 2 weeks, it's totally indispensable. You use it like 40 times a day to like clean out fingernail or open the mail or, cut up in some packaging or whatever. But you end up you end up feeling like you can't live without it. And so I thought that was really interesting, like just these products that you can't live without or that you feel naked without. That was part of the impetus for the idea. I'd always had knives. I grew up in the Midwest on a farm, and my mom always had a Swiss Army knife, and my dad, he worked in the coal mines. He operated like huge steam shovels, like the biggest steam shovel in the world, and was a union guy and would get these knives, generally, like slip joint kind of trapper style knives for years of service. And he would give them to me. And as a kid, that was a big deal. When your dad gave you a knife, like that was a big deal. But I grew up hunting and fishing and sort of in the outdoors, and just I was a Boy Scout, and always had knives with me. And so, later in life, I was carrying around this EDC knife, and a couple of things had happened. Like one, I really felt like pocket knives in general were getting a bad rap as being like dangerous and being weapons instead of just being these really highly functional tools. And that's kind of a mission that we're still on, is to sort of decriminalize knives. Like we can't do paid social advertising. There's a lot we can't do in this category. And I don't think that's really right. Like the actual knife that was in my head that I wanted to carry didn't exist at the time. And there wasn't really like a brand where I am that person. The effort was initially, it was just a project, and it was a nights and weekends project. And it was somewhat selfish, and like, hey, the thing I want is about the same size as that Smith & Wesson, but a lot cleaner, no blood grooves, just raw titanium.
How about a fuller this week?
Right. So
what was the first one that you guys made? Your first knife?
It was the Chapter. It was called the Chapter, and it was a titanium. We still make it, and we still do pretty well with it. But it was a titanium frame lock, like very simple. We tried to clean up as much as we could. We tried to really just take out everything that we could and make this like beautiful, simple titanium frame lock. And at the time, again, it's a while now. I mean, that was 11 years ago. There wasn't a lot like that out there. Right. I mean, the Sebenza was out there, and we were like, like that's the right way. Like that, the Sebenza never felt like it was hunting and fishing, or that it was overly tactical. Like didn't do it in black, like it was just that. And if you read, the story, it's like trying so hard to just make like the best knife for more like practical uses. And so we were really inspired by that and by that approach. So that was the first one. It's kind of just grown from there. I came out of, Bird Snowboards. I came out of Nike. And so I worked for most of my career for these big lifestyle brands. And as a part of that, I've gotten exposed to a whole lot of really interesting people that are doing like amazing things in all of these different realms. And almost all of those people have and carry knives. I felt like there were a whole lot of people out there that either carried knives and weren't thinking about it, and we could create a brand and products for them and actually shine a light on that for them, or people who probably should carry a knife but haven't ever. I do think for a lot of people, with products like the Redstone, which is kind of an entry product for us, we may well be the first real knife of any kind that they've ever had. So we hope to be inclusive, and when we talk about this stuff, we are hoping to grow the market, and so we often don't feel like we're I don't know that we compete with Benchmade and with the other big guys, because we're off doing kind of a different thing, and we hope that that we're just bringing new people to this, and kind of with the idea that a rising tide will lift all ships.
I think that takes us into this next part here, where we want to talk about kind of an announcement of a new product that you guys have. Do you want to introduce this?
Sure. Yeah, this is the Kline. This is our latest, greatest knife. It's made in the USA here, made in Idaho, featuring micarta scales and Magnucut. First time we've used Magnucut. So a lot of new stuff in there. So we're pretty excited about this one.
So just a few specs just for you out there that are watching. So you have about a 3.5-inch blade. It's about an 8-inch overall knife just below. Like you said, micarta scales with steel liners.
Yep.
We have we call this the slide bar.
Yeah, slide lock.
Slide lock. So we have the slide lock. We have the deep carry pocket clip. It is reversible, so total ambidextrous knife. Nice beefy thumb studs. Nice action on it. And this one is Magnucut, like I said, which is very interesting. Who would have thought that the James brand would be an early adopter of Magnucut? Not to get into too much of the weeds, because George is the guy for that, but with blade steel, there's always some give and take. If you want great edge retention, then it might be tough to sharpen. But with great edge retention, you're gonna want a harder blade, but that's gonna take away from some of the toughness of the blade. And then we're gonna throw corrosion resistance on top of all that. So you're always moving things around when you're trying to get a specific type of blade steel. And so some things suffer and some things are more superior. Laren Thomas comes in and he creates this blade steel that kind of checks all the boxes. Great edge retention, easy to sharpen, highly corrosive resistance. The real miracle workers here, though, are the metallurgists who actually created it. It's actually not an easy steel to make, but why did you really get it? I know it's the hottest new kid on the block, but was there anything more to that you guys wanted to?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, with knives in general, there's so much of what the knife is and how it performs is in the actual blade steel.
Sure.
Yet they all look exactly the same. And so it's really interesting, because you do really have to get into specifications and metallurgy to actually be able to pull out the differences. But Laren is on this sort of singular mission to kind of demystify that and really quantify it for everybody. And so I really appreciate his sort of scientific, sort of focused effort, but he also did a great job of marketing it.
Yeah.
I mean, It's not called, S3565-V, it's called Magnucut. He gave it a real name. It's got his little science logo. And for us who are trying to introduce people to the world of blade steels and actually unpack the things you just said, Laren makes that easy, because here's a really nice, it's got a nice name, he's got good marketing around it, and I can point people to actual science and talk to them about it. And Laren, I'll probably do him a disservice here, but what he was trying to do was get sort of the toughness that you typically get out of other high carbon steels while getting the corrosion resistance that you normally would get in the the high nickel and vanadium stainlesses. And it's that's great. For us, corrosion resistance to our customers is really, really important.
Yeah.
But they also, they need something that's going to be tough. They don't, they're not going to want to maintain these things or deal with chipped edges or anything else. And it's Laren was able to kind of give us that story, and it's a bit of a best of both worlds story if this is what you're looking for. Yeah. And anytime there's innovation like that, we surely want to explore it and figure it out and try to offer it to our customers. But I really appreciate what Knife Steel Nerds, what he's trying to do with that platform and himself personally in trying to demystify what is really the heart of this entire category, which is what's in that steel and how does it actually perform. And as it actually takes working with a handful of these different steels over some time before you can actually feel the difference. Yeah, I mean, we have a long way to go, but that's why working with people like Laren, I think, and makes it easy. It makes it easier for us.
This is a fairly good size. I've carried this one for a couple days. It's a pretty good size knife. It's I mean, call it a workhorse, if you could call it that.
I think that's how we even refer to it on the site. And that's kind of what we wanted. We wanted to make something that was, we often make, things like the pike, things like the redstone, things that are a little bit smaller, a lot of things that are sub 3 inches to make them sort of legal globally. But we have a lot of people that ask for knives that are a little bit bigger, people that are actually working in different areas. Yeah, so we wanted to make something that was a little bit beefier and a little bit bigger. And we had the Folsom, and I can't remember exactly what the specs are on the Folsom, but it's similar in design in some ways to the Kline, with its sort of the flatness in the scales and the general overall profile. But it's a little bit smaller. And so we're like, well, let's make that a little bit bigger. People are asking for something that they can actually get fully in hand and get all the fingers around. Let's do Magnucut. And we're very interested in making more stuff stateside, and we've got some big plans and some good things in the work there. But it was just kind of a thing, we do try to weed through the comments and listen to the feedback that we get, but make something in the USA, make something with Magnucut, make something a little bit bigger. And when we heard those things sort of loudly and clearly, and so that's what we were trying to do. But I really do hope that this is a knife that people that are sort of out in the field, like working and like really using a knife in sort of work applications on a daily basis, like I'd love to see this, out there, with the forestry guys and with police and, out there with people that are actually doing real deal work.
This is the Carter, this is actually the XL too, just for size reference. So you can kind of see it's even bigger. Yeah, that was one of the first, the Carter's been a real winner for us for the last few years. I mean, that was our first knife with sort of a slide lock mechanism. For us, it was sort of a big technological leap. And the original version of that was, just sub 3-inch blade. And we got a lot of requests for a larger version. Love this knife. I wish it was bigger. I wish it was full-handed so I could do more with it. So we made the Carter XL, which is kind of our first attempt at making a larger size of something, and that had done really well. And so this was sort of like, hey, for people that like where this is going, but maybe want USA made, maybe want more micarta, and want Magnucut, like let's give them this option. So it's a little, in some ways, it's a little bit of a hybrid between, a Carter XL on one side and sort of the Folsom on the other in terms of construction and form. So these are going to be coming out very shortly. Hop on bladehq.com, get on the wish list, and you'll be notified when they drop, so you can get one of these in your pocket. Like I said, we took some questions from the audience, and so we're going to see how this goes. Like I said, we're asking the hard-hitting questions. So I got a few here. So the first one is, who's James?
That's a great question. That's maybe the most asked question that we get. In reality, James is sort of this made-up character that kind of lives the life that we wish that we were living. In some ways, it's a bit of an amalgamation between like James Bond, maybe James Dean, James Cook, but these people that are
Rick James,
we got to add that back to our script. Yeah. But these are people that it may not be Jim, it may be James. They're a little bit more deserving of respect than Jim or a Jimmy. A little bit more refined, kind of appreciate the finer things, but they're doing, I think one of the things that we really appreciate are people that are competent at various different things. And so we work with a lot of athletes and professionals who are really good at more than one thing, and they've kind of moved it around. And as a kid, and still, like, when I love James Bond because one minute he's over here like winning at blackjack, and the next minute he's flying in a helicopter, and the next minute he's jumping motorcycles from roof to roof. And that level of competence, I think, was really interesting in how he can move it around. And we always just imagined that the products that we're making would be in the pocket and sort of enabling people like that. So it's a little bit of a call to action, like, hey, be James, like try to live more of that life. If you're carrying and using this stuff, you're probably doing something good. This is not a selfish exercise about me as the founder or about my partners or the other employees. It's about other people. So it's not Ryan's Knife Company. Sure. It's the James brand, and it's more like a bit of a call to arms, like, hey, come with us on this journey of making all this stuff. And when I got here, we were talking about the watch and the poster and these other things that we do.
We're like watch twins here.
Yeah.
Is it the same? It is.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, look at that.
These other things that we do that are kind of part of this community of James. And, we always use this hashtag, like, be James, like, come along on this adventure with us as we try to build kind of a community and a business together. And so that can't be a single solitary venture. It really has to be based on an idea. And so James is kind of like, the muse for that idea.
One of the questions that they asked before this, is there a James brand knife that is made for hard use? This is definitely
that is it. And that's one of the things, one of the parts of feedback that that we wanted to respond to. And that said, I mean, I think a lot of our knives will actually handle a lot of hard use, but this, even with the blade thickness here, and we designed this one to really be built to take, quite a beating.
Yeah, I did notice that the stock is pretty thick on this one. And I think that's where the hollow grind comes in.
That's right.
To still
give
you a thick stock, but
we did there was a lot of testing of like wood splitting and other things with Magnucut in this, because we did want to make something that people felt like very confident doing, what you would consider hard work.
I did notice on the homepage on your website, you did have a photo of someone batoning with this in the wood. It held up?
It held up. Yeah, and that was, partially, it's funny because we give these things from a wear testing perspective to people that are going to go and use them. And that was somebody that was in the backwoods, I think in British Columbia, camping. And we didn't tell them to baton it, but they did. And they said, we're like, okay, well, that's a good photo. I don't know that I actually want to share it, but we did, because it was like, that's what people actually do when people don't know. And we didn't disappoint them. Like, it was still like, I don't think they even sharpened after that.
Yeah.
But it held up. So, people do what they need to do, not necessarily what you want them to do. And that was one of those examples.
Do you have any plans to make a non-serrated redstone?
Maybe on the site currently. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Serrations are like blade steel. Like, you can have this debate all day long. And I personally really like serrations, just because I like, if you're gonna have a single blade, I like to have serrations on there. But I know that a lot of people don't. And, even internally, we have a lot of debate about it. But 2 models just recently, we introduced in non-serrated versions, the Ellis. We used to get that comment on the Ellis a lot, and the Redstone. And so I believe those are on the site currently in a couple of colorways. So look for it there. Yeah, that and the Ellis.
What's your favorite non-James brand knife?
Oh, that's a good question. Victorinox Super Tinker.
Okay.
And, it's hard not to really love Victorinox, because while the entire knife industry has been doing their thing, Victorinox has done their thing. And if you want to look at actual knife sales, I mean, Victorinox sells 10x more than anybody else. And no one ever thinks about Swiss Army as a weapon. They just think about it as a functional tool. And for what you get in terms of tools per dollar, it's just hard to beat the value. I'm just amazed at that brand and company. And so, if I'm not carrying a James brand product, like I carry a Super Tinker that I'm using the bottle opener and the screwdriver and the Phillips screwdriver and the toothpick and those things all the time. But it's, it's tiny. It was, I think, $35, and we pay a lot of attention to them. I don't know that you could ever compete with them, but I really give a lot of credit to, I think, both Victorinox and Leatherman for sort of not playing the knife game, but playing the utility game. And just, we're tools, we're utilitarian. We aren't really for protection, but we're helpful when you need it. And the fact that my mom always carried a Swiss Army knife with a corkscrew so she could open wine bottles and other things, but she would never consider herself a knife person. But I was literally at her house yesterday I fixed the remote for her Prius. Open up the drawer. She's got a Swiss Army Victorinox Classic right there. Use it, grab it, but she has those everywhere still. So that's a product that I carry around a lot.
All right, the last question was, why is your stuff so expensive?
Well, we get asked this a lot. And I mean, the honest answer is because it really has to be in order for us to sort of get by. And, no one at the James brand is, getting rich or driving around in Ferraris, but, we're in a weird place, and it's our business model, but we don't manufacture things ourselves. We work with a network of partners, and that is expensive to both to do and to manage. And we're small, and so we don't make things in giant quantities, and so that makes things expensive. We pay a lot of attention to a lot of details that actually add quite a bit to the cost. And so, if people are comparing just like scale material and blade steel and length, we're always going to be more expensive. But if you generally get down into the weeds and the details and things like packaging and the other stuff that we include, or textures, or the way that we actually, we fill that logo with enamel instead of just doing it with lasers. I mean, that adds dollars to costs of things. Our packaging is sometimes more expensive than other people's finished products can be. And, we spend a lot of money on things like our Our digital experience is good. We create a whole lot of content. I mean, for a company our size, I think some of our content is industry leading in photography, and we pay for all that. And so the general answer is this: like, we charge what we have to charge in order for us to exist. And for people, for the right people, it makes sense and they get it and they're willing to pay, and the business has grown. And for other people, it doesn't work. And again, we totally understand and respect that. But I don't ever feel like we are taking advantage of anybody. If you don't want to buy it, don't.
Sure.
I want to be as transparent about it as we can be. But I do think with us, you're paying for a lot of details and a lot of extras and other things that you may not get from other brands. And it's just the nature of us. We're small, diverse. We pay a lot of attention to details. We create a lot of content. We spend a lot on packaging and on kind of the full end-to-end experience. And, I think like when you're with us, you're on a ride. We do a lot of stuff, and but there's costs involved.
Yeah. And I mean, personally, cost should never be, it's never the only consideration, but for some reason, it seems that people are hyper-focused in on that. I mean, maybe because you stand out quite a bit in the community, but it just feels like.
Yeah, and maybe as we get bigger, it's possible that the gap of us being expensive will come down.
Yeah.
We're always going to be more expensive. Like, I never think that we're going to be able to go like parity with other people from a pure materials and, blade steel standpoint. But we don't ignore that feedback, and we hear it, and we have adjusted some prices to make things less expensive. But at the same time, we're at a time right now when everything in the world is getting more expensive. So you always end up squeezed. But I don't want anyone to think that we don't hear that and we don't pay attention to it and try to do things about it. But we sort of charge what we have to charge to do what we're doing.
What do you typically EDC?
Well, let's see what I have. I was on a plane today, so I may not have everything, but I don't go anywhere without a pen. And it's funny, right now, it's just a Uniball pen.
Okay.
I've got my watch, I've got my phone, stickers.
And typically, what would your knife carry typically look like?
Often it's a Carter, a black and stainless Carter, serrated. I love serrations. So that's generally what I carry on a daily basis. I always have, the pen and the knife sit side by side in my right pocket. This is always in my back. This is my little daily checklist of things to do. And I've got this little card system that I'm pretty serious about. And, in here, it's always just little sketches and drawings and little frameworks and notes up. Look, there's merchandising coming up. So I can't go anywhere without this and without this. And
old school.
Yeah, well, it's funny because when something strikes you and you need to write it down, there's no good way to do in here what you do with this. And so often on the plane today, here's an idea. Woke me up. I had to write it down in there. And so this is about speed, and nothing can replace that yet. And we've done pens. There's more pens and stuff coming from us. We continue to work with. This is from Aaron Draplin, the Field Notes guy. He's been a friend of mine since the late 1980s, and so we continue to work with him. And it's been cool to watch him sort of come to dominate the EDC notebook world, which is something he just kind of fell into. This is another Draplin thing, the bandana that he makes. But it's funny, the one thing that came out of COVID for me was that I now carry a bandana daily, and I carried it in my pocket to be like the emergency mask when I forgot a mask, and wore it as a mask all the time. But now I'm using it all the time to wipe off my glasses, or wipe off your hands, or whatever you need it for. And I'm kind of I can't believe that I never carried a bandana before, but it saved my bacon a million times when you'd forget a mask and go to pick up food and you need a mask on, and you're like, all right, well, but that's pretty standard for me. But I love laydowns. I think our whole brand was kind of predicated on what is this stuff? How is it arranged? How do these things work together? And that was really, to me, early days before we existed. I spent a lot of time on everydaycarry.com with looking at those laydowns and just looking at people the idea that you could tell so much about somebody by looking at this laydown. You could be like, oh, that person, that's a creative person. That person is a law enforcement. That person works in the outdoors. That person is a designer. And I just always thought that was really interesting, was the ability to look at what people had in their pockets and kind of make some determinations about what they're into and what kind of person they are. Oh man, it would really be fun if we could make this and one other thing, and then have them kind of buy the other stuff from other people. So that is a big part of the brand, is to really be, we really want to sort of own the pocket of our customers and really connect the wrist and the pocket and this world together. We don't want to make all this stuff. There's a lot of stuff we're not ever interested in making, but we clearly want to be the knife in your pocket and a couple other things if we could be. The only knife that's useful is the one that you actually have with you when you
100%.
need it. And so we're really interested in having people fall in love with the brand and with the products so that they're always there with you, because you can argue about blade steels and mechanisms and other things all day long, but if you don't have it in your pocket and it's not there when you reach for it, then it doesn't mean anything. And so, a part of what we want to do is we want people to fall in love with the brand and with the actual products and the details so that it will be there when you need it.
Thanks so much for being here. I want to thank you for being here. Honestly, it was a pleasure. It was a privilege.
Sure.
We appreciate you coming in. Excited about the Kline, and I think the community is going to respond well. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. We look forward to it. We'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks so much. Thank you.